Let's get this stuff together just a little bit here. There we go. Happy New Year, I guess. Just a little stressed right now. My brain's not in it right. So Happy New Year. Hope everything's going well on your end of the world. Tonight, brainstorming up. So one of the things I've been thinking about doing with the animation project is, that's not the best place to start this, is it? There's a better way to start this evening. Happy New Year. Glad to have you aboard. Hope you're doing well. And hope you're looking to get some creative enjoyment out of this year. So hopefully this year is creative enjoyment for all of us in some ways. So I seem to be having some skin issues, or we've got a bug infection. I don't know, whatever. We'll figure it out as we go. It is stressing me a little bit, but I'm trying not to focus on it. I did get some test results back from some blood work, and I have had coronavirus, so I've got antibodies. So theoretically, I'm less likely to get it again. So we're good on that score, maybe? Maybe that's a good lead into the new year. But for anybody who's joining for the first time, and for those of us who need the reminder, I am working on creative projects every month this year. Challenges to challenge myself to be creative and enjoy the year my way. And the project for this month is an animation project. So what I'm hoping to achieve in this, at least the first part of this month, I'd like to get a good chunk done in the first week, because that way I can expand and do some play with some other stuff. One of the things that's fairly common, and I might just give that a go to get started, is stick figure fights. If you've ever seen some of those things, it's basically people draw stick figures in some sort of Mortal Kombat or superhero type fight, and they're fighting stick figures. And I was thinking about it, and I do remember, I think it was one of the Marvel movies. I think it was Thor Ragnarok, has a closing credits scene that is very stylistically done as silhouettes in multiple layers. And looking at it, my brain immediately said that I could use that sort of pattern. So in the Thor Ragnarok ending credits, they have these scenes where it's usually mostly stationary. A takeaway scene from the episode, the movie, done as a character in silhouette against other characters in silhouette. Everything's stationary. There's one even, I think, of Loki, and he's kneeling with a knife behind his back while tossing up his horned crown. And the crown's suspended in the air. And at first, the scene is stationary. It slides into frame, and then the crown ends up moving through the air. Just slightly, slowly. It's like a slow-mo capture. And then they slide into another frame for another scene from the movie. And I was looking at that thinking, like, that's just a step above a stick figure fight. So what you do is you have a backdrop, a back screen that in many of those scenes was the same. It was that sort of circle with a circuit kind of line coming off of it, like a circuit board. That was lit against a pale, dark background. So if the color of the scene was blue, you would have a medium blue with a very light blue circle on a line coming off of it. If it was red, you'd have a pale pink with a very white pink circle with a circuit line coming off of it, and that's your background. That's your wall. And then the scene in front of that might be, some of them had like 5 layers, but most of them were like 3-layer pieces. So you'd have like a border around it to set the frame of the shot that you're doing. And then you might have the layer in front of that be the events of the scene going on, caught in a freeze frame with minute motions to just give a little extra energy to the still frame. And then the front frame would be another framing piece that sort of cuts off the edges, bottoms, and whatnot, the corners of the whole scene, so that it looks like you're looking down a hallway or looking through a security screen at the scene. And most of those things are still frames. And I feel like the difference between stick figures fighting and those silhouette characters is just how thick you're making your lines. And so I really do think I could potentially do a scene where you do a backdrop layer, maybe a behind framing layer, a middle action sequence, and then a front framing layer, and then do your stick figure fights in that center frame layer, and occasionally have transitions to other framing layers by characters knocking each other into the next frame. And so, like, if you did a stick figure fight, and I think that's probably what I'm going to play with, is just do a stick figure fight animation, just to get a sense of the animation at its simplest form. Do the framing on multiple scenes, and then work on fleshing out the shape of the stick figure. So it's no longer a stick figure, but it has the facial in profile, the arms, legs, and torso being character body proportions in silhouette. And that's the other thing about like the still frames that you see in the Thor Ragnarok ending, is you see them in silhouette, but they're essentially just like shades of the same scene color. Most of the scenes at that closing credits were monochrome, different shades of blues, reds, and whatnot. So even the parts that our brain tells us are black shadows are in fact just a different shade of blue. Oftentimes not even that dark. Your brain is telling you this is the darkest part of the scene, so it's shadowed. And I feel like stick figure fights sometimes are like red character versus blue character. Sometimes they're just black and white stick figure fights. So it's entirely possible that you could do a monochrome set that this interaction takes place in. And then you can do the color shading, where you take that blues or reds or purples or whatever you're going to end up using, and use those colors. So I think that would be a fun thing to dabble at. I'm probably going to end up having to use keyboard and mouse to do it, and I'm probably going to see if I can do it on something like MS Paint. Like the simplest, I don't need anything special to do it kind of work. And I might load the images into my video editing software and just run them as frames in an animation. And so that could be kind of fun. But the other thing I've been thinking about also doing is another another way of doing, and I think I talked about this on New Year's Eve, which I'll talk about as closing, I guess. But I think one of the things I remember talking about on New Year's Eve was the idea of, if you took a sequence from a movie, it's more than likely that you're going to have dialogue scenes where you're going to have a shot of a character's face from one angle, then a shot of a responding character, and then a shot of the first character responding, and you're literally just taking pictures of faces talking. You can set the backdrop behind them, and you can get a pretty decent solid scene of events that way. And if you build your character faces simple enough, where the head barely moves or moves once or twice in the whole sequence, you're really just doing it's funny to think about it like this, because if you watch a movie, they always feel very dynamic. But if you really, really sat down and played through a movie, I guarantee you that at some point there's going to be a dialogue where it's a person's face and another person's face, and that first person's face, second person's face, first person's face, second person's face, and that's all you're watching for 2 to 3 minutes usually, possibly as many as 12 minutes for a back and forth of substantial importance. You can do a whole dynamic dialogue scene that way, and if you do it right, it doesn't feel like you're cheaping out. Like, people feel like, oh, that was a full animated feature. Honestly, all you're really mostly moving is, you may get a little like head motion to make it feel not quite so stationary, and then eyes and mouth. That's all you really have to move. Maybe once or twice in the scene, do a head turn, or something like that. And that's, each of those is going to be like maybe a half hour to an hour to compose a complex interaction feature like those. But the rest of it is going to be like, once you compose your head and other scene features, where did I slice my finger up on that? Once you compose your head and your mouth moving and your eyes moving features, you can make a fairly dynamic feeling scene just by doing like perspective cuts. And so, like, I might just see if I can do both of those as experiments. Now, could I do a claymation, like a stop motion animation cuts, like the dialogue scene between characters? Possibly. I think it would be potentially fun to do a set of scenes for my job cashiering stories. But I don't have to. It'd be nice. I think it would also be fun to see if I could do some animations for my channel art. So like when starting the channel, just do simple like boom logo on the screen, and then like what we're doing that episode roll in. But those aren't like 5-minute shorts that I'd end up doing. So I think over the next day or so, I'm going to see if I can write up some simple scripts for the animations. I may even storyboard out a few things. And again, this is make the simplest animation you can, just to get the practice and the feel for it. Like, I'm not going to be making any like full-length animated features or anything like that. But I do want to dabble with that a little bit and sort of get a feel for what I could get away with, what I could pull off, and how to maximize the effect while not necessarily minimizing, but streamlining the workflow so that it's not something you have to spend months doing just to get a 5-minute animated feature. So I will dabble with that a little bit of it. So at this point, we're 15 minutes in. It's either a short one, but I will say I think I was definitely intoxicated by the end of that New Year's Eve live stream where I shaved this. I haven't shaved since, so it doesn't grow super fast, but it is coming back in. But I don't drink very often. Like, I think the last time I can remember having an alcoholic drink before New Year's was probably at least 10 years ago, if not more. Probably more like 25. And that was probably a single bottle of a hard cider. And like a beer bottle sized hard cider, not like a jug or a liter sized bottle of hard cider. So I'm not super familiar with what my body can tolerate, and I'm not super familiar with what most people's bodies can tolerate. So I'm thinking on New Year's Eve, rough estimate, I drank a pint of homemade mead, a honey wine. I'm pretty sure, I'm a little vague on this. I don't know if that makes me a lightweight or not, but I'm pretty sure most people would have a buzz from a pint of wine. I'm just guessing because, like I said, I don't have any experience with that. But it was on an empty stomach, and I was already tired, and I drank a pint of wine in probably about 45 minutes total. So I drank it fast. I drank a fair amount. I did it on an empty stomach while I was tired. I do think I would dare say that's probably the first time I've ever been drunk. I don't know how drunk we could say I was, but that was the first time I was whatever level of drunk that was. It's also the prelude to the first, I guess, hangover that I've ever had. I mean, it's probably a hangover. It wasn't like the worst kind of hangover you could ever have. I didn't throw up. I didn't get particularly violently ill. My system was unhappy with me for a day, but it wasn't super bad. I didn't have a throbbing headache. I did feel like somebody jammed cotton wads so densely into my head that my whole head was just filled with cotton. And I had a little trouble with some of my activities that day. My brain was just not up to some of the things that I could usually do pretty easily. But for the most part, no visiting family or friends. Oh, there was an online gathering. One of my friends, for years, there were two things that I would do for New Year's Eve. If there's nothing going on, I would usually go to a movie theater and watch a movie that would cross over the New Year time frame. So I always considered it like spending the New Year in a place of imagination and adventure as just sort of like a warm up for the new year. So I did watch some of the newer Star Wars movies, and I think I watched one or two other movies for some New Year's. So when we crossed into New Year's, I would watch a movie at the theater. But not like one of the local theaters is closed now, and the other local theater had a movie I didn't care about that would start at 10:30 and possibly be over by midnight, before midnight anyway. So I'm like, that really doesn't appeal to me overly much. And the other thing I've done during New Year's Eves, one of my friends from, I was talking with him on New Year's Eve, and it's hard to imagine that we've known each other for about 10 years, possibly 11 to 12 years. We worked together on some projects at one point, and he would occasionally, he bought a place, I think about 6 or 7 years ago, and he hosted parties at that place for Halloween and Valentine's Day and things like that. And people would come in costumes and play games all night long. but he did a few New Year's Eve parties as well, and like invite only kind of things. You have to know the right people to get an invite, and people you invite are not allowed to invite anybody else. So it's sort of exclusive, and like they'd have a room set aside for dancing with a laser show and a DJ friend of theirs, and they had a cotton candy machine. They had a table full of snacks, and a board game table. They'd have a back room that was they'd fill a small kids inflatable pool with play balls and have a ball pit. Um, yeah, we had a giant Jenga tower. We did, I think he did about 4 or 5 New Year's Eves, and trying to remember, he might have done like 3 or 4 New Year's Eves, and I think I went to 2 or 3 of them at least. But there were a few years where he didn't do it, and he couldn't do it this year. He didn't want to be one of those people who's not taking this seriously, and he didn't want to encourage people not to take it seriously. So he couldn't host a party at his house. But he did schedule an online virtual meeting for multiple people and set up a Facebook page with a link to the meeting site that you could sign up for. And he would invite people to the Facebook group, which had the link to go to the setup page for attending the virtual gathering. And honestly, that was actually really kind of nice. We got chatting and interacting with some people I don't know, but several people I do know and haven't seen at least in a year. Some of them I haven't seen in 10 years. There's a guy in Australia who I met around the same time we all got to know each other, working on the projects we were working on. And he's a friend of mine on social media. We talk back and forth, but I had not seen his face other than pictures that he posted on social media. And I'd not heard his voice in 10 years. And like he's in Australia. I know he has an Australian accent. I know that part. But you kind of forget what that sounds like until you hear it again. So it was really nice to see him again. And a couple of the other people I haven't seen in a while. And it was just a virtual chat. I went in for some of that a little bit before the New Year's Eve video I made. I popped out, came over here for, I guess it was a little over an hour and 15 minutes we did on New Year's Eve. And then finished up here and popped back over. I was just going to check back in to see who was there, and I was one of like 2 people for like a half an hour to 45 minutes, just touching base and chatting with people for the last bit. The party was supposed to be over at 1:30, but we hung around for a little while longer, and then a couple other people popped in for a short bit. Most of them were intoxicated. And I think I finished up actually around like 3:30. And then by that time, I think I ate something a little. I think I went and I don't recall much. I went and ate a little some protein or something like that to finish the night off, give me something in my stomach. Crawled into bed, fell asleep. Woke up about 4 hours later with my ears ringing and difficulty falling back asleep. I maybe got another hour, and then I had to. I woke up and I just couldn't sleep anymore, and I didn't feel great, but I just tried to lay and relax a little bit for a couple more hours before I had to get up and go to work for a full I think it was about an 8-hour shift. I did my shift at work. Um, I didn't really have too many problems other than like I made some simple mistakes that I would otherwise not normally make. Um, but I think in the long run, I did pretty good. I mean, both the drunk and the hangover portion of it were probably very mild cases compared to most of the stories I hear from people I know. So I think I probably lucked out on that score. Um, but it like I still sort of felt like crummy for all of the next day, and a little bit the next day after that was just still clinging on to some of the dregs of that. In the long run, not super bad. I mean, it also affirms that this is not something I ever really want to do often. I don't understand the appeal. Like, even when I was on here and chatting, that buzzy lightheadedness, I didn't care for. It's not my favorite feeling in the world. It's not something I'd ever like seek out. Um, and I don't like the taste of alcohol. You probably noticed. I don't much care for the taste of the alcohol component of drinks enough to want that enough to deal with feeling drunk. And I don't want to be drunk enough to deal with the alcohol taste that I don't care for. So there's really no draw for me to do that on a regular basis or more than once or twice in a lifetime. Um, the remainder feeling like snot for the next day, yeah, that's definitely something like that being something that's hanging over the if you don't do this carefully, you'll have this as a consequence after that. Yeah, I don't want to deal with that either. So I'm pretty sure from this point on, if it's a wine or a spirits kind of drink, I'm going to stick to very small samplings. If it's a hard cider or like a beer, which I don't care for, I really don't like the taste of them. Um, I will stick to one bottle, and that's fair. That's a steady, easy space for me to be in. Now, am I going to swear off all alcohols? No, I don't feel like I'm in any danger of ever falling so deeply in love with either being drunk or the taste that it's ever going to be a problem for me. Um, I mean, I'm sure many drunks think that, but um, the only reason I'm leaving the space open that I'm going to try alcohol again is I may do some taste tests of alcoholic drinks in the future. I'm thinking specifically of like one of the things I did want to try was mead. Well, I've now tried it. Some of them might be okay, but I don't. No, I'm not going to drink like that again. I'm never going to drink a pint of mead again. Nope. Um, but there's like things specifically on my mind. Like I know there's like hard lemonades, hard teas. Um, One of my housemates has tried and recommends a alcoholic root beer. I'd love to try that just to see what it tastes like. But I'm never going to drink more than one bottle in a sitting, I don't think. And even if I were to do a taste test, I'd probably do at most half a bottle and then just pop the rest in the fridge for some other time. I'm not really gung ho about drinking. I really don't understand. Like, I not only didn't care for being intoxicated on New Year's Eve, I'm markedly uncomfortable, like really disconcerted by that feeling. It felt to me like I've had panic attacks in the past, and I've never really fully hyperventilated, but that sense of like getting too much air too fast and you get a little whoa, like I've done things like that in the past where there are some breathing exercises you do for meditation or exercise where you just in, out, in. And if you do that enough, you can get a little loopy. That's sort of what it reminded me of. I did not care for it. I never like that feeling of disconnect from my body and feeling like I'm losing control of my mind. I don't like that. I really don't like it. It's enough to give me anxiety, and it sort of creeps me out. In the same way, and I'll say this, the ideas of like neurodegenerative disorders freak me out. It's like a phobia. I have this fear. Like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's scare the crap out of me. And so this disorientation and the loss of like self-control creeps me out. It just creeps me out. So yeah, that's about how I feel about alcohol. I have a similar feeling about any other narcotic substances. I'm not interested in partaking. Would I say that I will never do it? No. Because there's an off chance that if I ever feel like I'm curious enough, I might get somebody who has some serious experience to help guide me through essentially a taste test. But like I'm not chopping at the bit to get into experimenting with those kind of things. They don't suit me. I'm not fond of them. I mean, if I really wanted to, get into a new frame of mind, I do know enough mental exercises where I can play around with my way of thinking and trip myself up a little bit. But I definitely do not need to be using chemical substances. Partly because I already know that my physical health is risked with some of those things. My health is delicate enough that upsetting the balance can be a rough ride. And I'm not really keen to take that ride. There's also an element of like, I just don't really understand the appeal. Like, I do know I have genetic family and even adopted family who are people who deal with substance abuse. And I respect them with their struggles. I even have some friends who have some issues. But there's just a part of me like I don't really understand that draw, but I do know that if it was a habit that I wasn't so averse to and I'd fallen into it in high school or shortly after high school, I could have easily gotten into that habit. I could see an alternative universe where I am a drunk. I could see that being something that might have happened, but it would take a lot more work than I'm willing to put into doing it. And I'm disinclined to do that. But it is a new year, trying to keep my mind in positive places. I know with the pandemic is still here, and so is some of the political unrest and problems. We can't pretend that that's all just going to disappear because it's a new year, but I'm intending to focus on creative things. I have had already once this year a sort of panic attack. Wasn't fun, but we're only 3 days into this new year and I already had it. Hello, welcome. So yeah, New Year's, first time drunk, first time hangover, I guess. I went 40 some odd years of my life, believe it or not, never having experienced either of those things. And then New Year's Eve, not knowing what I was doing, taste testing some of my homemade meads, I have in fact experienced it now. I unintentionally drank probably way too much. Happy New Year. So I'm going to see if I can do a little more work on the animation stuff tomorrow. My hope is tonight that I should be able to go over to the Roving Jack channel and I need to dig through some of my hard drives. Yeah, I will need to go through some of my hard drives and make sure I can reclaim some of those, because I have the older computer that I did some of my live streams on with the broken monitor. That was the one I took on a trip around the country with me to Makerspaces. That should still have some of those files on it. It should still be good. It's not. I backed up all of the Makerspace tours that I did. So I've got most of that. I may have lost some audio to a few of them, and I may have lost the video to a few of them, like the better quality video. I think I lost some of that, and I may have to tinker with some of it. But I want to see if I can get a week's worth of those up this coming week and start getting back into the pattern of uploading those. Because that's one of my goals for this new year. And I will tell you, I've got a lot of really crazy ideas of what I want to do this year. If we can keep my brain together, keep the panic attacks to a minimum, manage the job and doing the videos for this channel, Roving Jack, and potentially Opportunity Forge videos, then I'd like to be able to do all of that this year. It's gonna be at least a part-time job's worth of work for all of those. And if we throw in the podcast ideas that I was working on and a few other things, I feel like it's a lot of work. But if I do it right, it could be worthwhile enough that I might be able to just step away from the regular job, at least partly step away, decrease my need to be there, and work a little bit more on the things I want to do here. So I want to, I started this channel doing reviews of books, movies, games, and whatnot, and I want to get back into doing those here. So do a review of some books, and I'd kind of like to do at least 2 reviews this week. And I have to really crack down and figure out what it is I'm going to review this week on here. I will still do the live videos every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday. And then Opportunity Forge, I'm thinking it's going to be a weekly upload for that channel. The Roving Jack is probably going to be edit and upload minimum 5 videos a week over there. Possibly a 6th one that's sort of more vlog-like on the weekends. And the podcasts will be something I work my way towards. I'm not sure I'm really ready to hit those just yet. I know I'm beating myself up and feeling like I'm skimping on it by not doing them yet. But I feel like handling 3 YouTube channels at a time is enough for getting started in. Once I settle into a routine of getting that worked out, I can see what kind of time I have to put into the podcasts. As for things I'm going to be doing over on Opportunity Forge, I want to do a channel video for introducing what I'm trying to do with the channel. And then what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to upload the experiment I did for 15 days where I ate nothing but mini donuts and lost weight doing that. But I think I need to record an opener for it and a closer for that video and edit the video content that I have for it. So that's going to be 1 week. I'm not sure if I'm going to do every week or bi-weekly. The other thing I want to do over on there is the first of learning to do new things. So I think I'm probably going to do something as mundane as learning, what is it, that conscious living organization of your living space, where you minimize the clothing to just the things you need. You learn to fold them so that they fit all nicely in a tight little space. And so you just streamline your living. That's one of the things I want to do. But some of the other things I want to do are I want to learn how to do some knife throwing. I want to do a little bit of fire breathing, fire handling. So learn to do a routine of magic tricks. Learn to play the piano, like, and I want to do like set it up as like, okay, this is the project I want to learn to do, and then record some of my attempts and practice, and then reach a point where I finish up with a summary of like, I've gotten this good at it. I'm not going to be an expert, and I'm not going to even necessarily be good at it, but just passable would be appreciated. And once I get some of those things under my belt, I will edit them into this is me learning to do these things, and kind of at the same time keeping track of learning how to learn better, and keeping track of sort of like the challenge of how long did it take me to learn these skills. And some of it would be mental stuff, like learning to do math tricks in my head. Like one that I've definitely thought about is, you ever see the calendar calculations where like somebody can say like, okay, so you were born on June 15th, 1975. So your birthday was, say, a Thursday. I don't know what it was that year. But there's a method for calculating that. I want to learn that. Yeah, that one of the hurdles for some of my goals. I have a massive list of things I'd love to learn. One of the hurdles for that for me is I don't have some of the things I need to do these things. So I do not have any fire handling torches, but I do know some people who have done fire eating and fire handling, and one or two people who have done fire breathing. And I can kind of tap some resources on some of that. There's also some information you can learn from books and online content. So I could learn some of these things, but like I can make or acquire some tools to do things. I'd love to learn how to play multiple instruments, like the guitar, the piano, the violin, maybe the harmonica, and maybe learn how to do some. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm ready to do a lot of fire spinning yet. That may be later down the line. Just making a simple torch, being able to put it in the put the fire in the palm of your hand, take the torch away, close your hand on the fire, make a line of it down your arm, and then swipe it up. These are simple fire handling tricks that you can learn to do, and it's one of the statements that you hear a lot from performers of things like that are that if you can build a routine of 5 tricks, you have a performance you can do. Like most of those things, magic tricks, sideshow tricks and performances and things like those, honestly, you can get a 5-minute routine from banter, jokes, and stage presence if you intersperse about 5 tricks into it. Now, if you want to do a performance more than once for a set audience, like you go to a Thanksgiving party with family and you do a set of routines in the backyard as a fun thing, that routine is now known by your audience. You're not going to repeat the exact same performance the next time you do a performance for them. So usually, minimum, you don't want more than 2 repeat acts within a routine. So in that mindset, 5 plus 3 would be 8. To me, being able to do 8 different things means I have enough space to move things around in routines so that people don't ever quite feel like they've had a repeat performance. And so 5 magic tricks, 5 fire handling tricks, 5 gymnastic tricks, 5 songs. If I can get that much down, I think that's really the qualifier for being moderately successful at learning a skill. And that's where I'm setting most of my markers. Now I will intersperse some of these things I'm learning with the high carb diet that I tried last year, the high protein and the high fat, the donut exclusive experiment. I might do something like that where it's exclusively fruit. Like, because one of the things that, like, people go like, you ate nothing but mini donuts, like literally nothing but mini donuts every meal, every day for 15 days. That's got to be so unhealthy. But then they say, like, you should eat some fruit. Like, if you ate nothing but apples every meal, every day for 15 days, you're doing roughly the same thing that those donuts do. They're going to be, apples are higher carbohydrate. Donuts probably have more fiber. They also have some fats in them, which your body needs fats over periods of time, which the apple won't have a lot of fats. Micronutrient wise, depending on the ingredients in a donut, you might be about even on that score. So it might be worth it just to do like here's what happens if I eat bananas, apples, oranges, and a few other fruits exclusively for 15 days. I'd like, in that scenario, to be able to do like starting tests for my cholesterol, my triglycerides, and my blood sugars. That would burning foods, unless you're talking about calorically burning foods for like fitness and exercise. Burning foods would be more of a science experiment, and I'd be more inclined to do stuff like that over on Roving Jack, or more likely, I might actually start uploading to its sister companion channel, which would be Steaming Mad. Was a channel I set up and will eventually get to be putting content up on that is more science experiments and that sort of stuff. Like fire starting, like if you want to start a fire, you can use there was a guy online who did something like that, which he bought a bunch of different varieties of potato chips to see which worked better as fire starters for a campfire. I mean, there are different channels for different things. I think mostly the Opportunity Forge is going to be me learning to do new things. And actually, speaking of oils, that's one of the things that I'm super curious about. It may be one of the few experiments that I do for skills in Opportunity Forge, other than dietary ones. The thing I learned just from preliminary research and whatnot is you don't have to use the toxic fuels that a lot of fire breathing has used in the past. A lot of them use naphthas and things like that, and you sure as heck don't want to use alcohols because those burn too easily, and the flame's not very visible. So you can get a hot blue flame all over yourself way easier using alcohol than you would with other fuels. And one of the things I did find out is you can use mineral oil, like stuff you can get in the pharmacy section that you can use as a laxative, is an oil that will burn when vaporized really well. But if you rubbed your face with it and held a match to your face, you won't catch. So it's a safer fuel to use. Its ignition temperature is higher, so it's not always easy to get to catch when you're blowing it across a torch. But looking into that a little bit more, there may be some vegetable oils that you can do the same thing with. And I'm super curious to try a variety of different oils to see both the safest fuel to use and the easier ones to use. I'm pretty sure I would almost guarantee you that lamp oil and things like that are probably some of the easiest ones to use. And they're far more safer than like a kerosene or some of the other things that some people have used in the past. Idiots that some of them are. But I may do some experimentation with some of that. But that's more along the lines of learning part of the ways that you can do fire breathing that make more sense. Like I also know you can do it with powdered solids. Like I could use a cornstarch. It's not the best opportunity and you're going to end up with a mouthful of paste, but it's way safer. Just don't inhale the dust, that's all. But it's also a little tricky to get right. So I might do a few of those things, interspersed with the donut diet, maybe the fruit diet. And I've debated whether or not I was going to do a couple of other things food-wise as an experiment. But I would do also some exercise routines. I did some of that last year where I did some, and that's one of the things that crushed me about the hard drive crashes this past year. Was the loss of some of that, because I had recorded where I started from and where I ended up doing my exercise routine change up. Literally in, I think it was 21 days, I went. Lamp oil is, I think a lot of it's mineral oil based. It may be a naphtha, but it's a low absorption naphtha. It's usually one of the safer options. Not that you're going to be drinking cups full of it, but yeah, the exercise routine I did last year was I went in 21 days from barely being able to do a push-up, and like the jumping jacks I could do a fair number of, but lunges, squats, rows, I think there were a few others. I went from being able to do less than 10 of each to being able to do 100 of them each at once in 21 days. And I'm like, that was pretty cool. And I recorded my progress and my beginning and starting on that program. And I know I lost some of it in the hard drive crash, but I think I still have some of it too. But so I want to kind of do some of that, the eating, some of the simple stuff like life organizing or meditation or things like that, and intersperse that with learning to do card tricks or magic tricks or fire handling or fire breathing, juggling, maybe learn how to ride a unicycle, those kinds of things. Do skateboarding tricks, learn to play a couple instruments. Like I can build a pretty substantial list really quickly. The question I have in my mind is like is this a weekly video series that I do where I do a video every Monday or something like that? Or is this something I do twice a month? Or is this something I do once a month? I think once a month would be spreading it a little thin. But I do want to try to get at least a start on that going while I get to the point where I'm uploading my Makerspace tour videos, while I do my reviews on here. And this year is my monthly challenge year, so I'm also trying to do an animation this month, and next month is the alphabet project, so that's pretty much a daily project. So it's a lot, and then to think that as I get comfortable with it, if I get the routine down right, I will be hopping on to producing somewhere between 1 and 5 podcasts games that you can play. That seems like an awful lot. But if I actually manage to pull it off and get some good things going, I think it'd be worth it. Let's hope the world stays together long enough for that to work, huh? All right, so I'm going to call it here tonight. We're almost at an hour. And I'm going to indulge a mild panic attack and check around for things to soothe my anxieties. And then I'm going to work on a few things before I call it a night tonight. And hopefully I sleep well. I have definitely slept fairly deeply for the last 2 nights. I got home the New Year's Day after doing a full shift at work. I got back. I made a pepperoni pizza, which doesn't sit well on my stomach, but I made it. I ate it all in one go. I climbed into bed and slept for 10 and a half hours. I don't ever do that. So that was recovery from the hangover. And then last night, I think I probably got about 8 or 9 hours. Yeah. Actually, you can make rockets out of sausages of some kinds, I believe. All right. I'm calling it for tonight. Take care. Have a good night. I will catch you guys later. Next one, I think, is what's today? Today's Sunday. So Tuesday night.